The morning sun cut through the windows of Fort Benning's administrative building, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. Corporal Nadia Volkov stood at attention before the assignment desk, her uniform crisp and her posture perfect, yet something in her gray eyes seemed to look past the present moment into some distant, darker place. The clerk behind the desk barely glanced up from his computer screen. "You must be the new transfer," he said, his tone flat with disinterest. "You look pretty young. How long you been in?" "Long enough," Nadia replied quietly, her voice steady but soft. He printed out her assignment papers and slid them across the counter. "Report to Charlie Company, 3rd Platoon. Sergeant Holloway will get you sorted. Try to keep up, kid. This isn't basic training anymore." Nadia took the papers without comment and turned toward the door. As she walked down the corridor, she passed a bulletin board covered with commendations and unit citations. Her eyes lingered on the Purple Heart display for just a moment before she continued on. The barracks were buzzing with activity when she arrived. Soldiers moved with the practiced efficiency of those who had trained together for months, their camaraderie evident in their easy banter and coordinated movements. Nadia stepped through the door, duffel bag over her shoulder, and the room gradually fell silent. A tall soldier with a swagger in his step approached first. His name, Tape, read Brennan. Well, he announced loud enough for everyone to hear. "Looks like they sent us a baby to babysit. What are you fresh out of basic?" Nadia set her duffel down on an empty bunk. "I have my orders," she said simply. "Orders," Brennan repeated with a laugh, turning to the others. "She has orders." He looked back at her, his expression a mix of amusement and condescension. "Let me guess. Desk job back home. Decided to come play soldier for real now? Before we go further into this story, drop a comment and let us know what state you are watching from. Maybe you have witnessed similar courage or misjudgment in your own community." A shorter soldier with sharp features joined Brennan. Her name was Kessler. "Great, just what we need," she said, crossing her arms. "Another rookie who is going to need constant supervision. You even know how to field strip your weapon?" Nadia met her gaze evenly. "Yes." "Oh, she knows how to take apart a rifle," Brennan mocked. "Probably learned it in some air-conditioned classroom. This is the real deal, sweetheart. When we go out on exercises, people get hurt if you do not know what you're doing." "I understand," Nadia said, her voice remaining calm despite the hostility. Sergeant Holloway entered the barracks then, his presence immediately commanding attention. "Everyone shut it," he barked. He looked at Nadia. "You Volkov?" "Yes, Sergeant." He consulted his clipboard. "Says here you are coming from reassignment. Medical discharge waiver." He looked her up and down skeptically. "You sure you are cleared for active duty? You look like a strong wind could knock you over." "I am cleared, Sergeant," Nadia confirmed. Holloway grunted. "Well, I hope you are tougher than you look, because we do not have time for hand-holding. Brennan, Kessler, get her oriented. Supply run at 1400 hours. She goes with you." As the sergeant left, Brennan leaned against the bunk frame. "Medical discharge waiver," he said thoughtfully. "What happened? Sprain your ankle doing jumping jacks." The laughter that followed was sharp and meant to cut. Nadia began unpacking her duffel methodically, placing items in her footlocker with precise, practiced movements. Her hands were steady, but those who watched closely might have noticed the faint scars that traced along her forearms, disappearing under her sleeves. "This is going to be a long deployment," Kessler muttered to Brennan. "Stuck babysitting someone who probably cannot handle full pack march." Nadia said nothing, continuing to organize her gear. Among her possessions, carefully wrapped and placed at the bottom of her footlocker, was a small wooden box. She did not open it. She did not need to. She knew exactly what was inside. The supply run turned out to be exactly what Nadia expected. Brennan drove the transport truck with deliberate recklessness, taking corners too fast and braking too hard, clearly trying to unsettle her. Kessler sat in the passenger seat, occasionally glancing back with a smirk as Nadia maintained her balance in the cargo area without complaint. When they arrived at the supply depot, Brennan tossed her a requisition list. "You handle this, rookie," he said. "Let us see if you can manage basic inventory without screwing it up." We will be at the canteen. Nadia took the list and headed into the depot. The supplies sergeant, a grizzled veteran named Morrison, looked up from his paperwork. You with Charlie Company? Yes, Sergeant. He studied her for a moment, something flickering in his expression that might have been recognition, though he said nothing about it. He processed her requisition efficiently, and, as he loaded the items, he spoke quietly. They giving you a hard time? Nothing I cannot handle, Nadia replied. Morrison paused, a heavy crate in his hands. I have been in this man's army for 23 years, he said. Seen a lot of soldiers come through. Some of them carry themselves a certain way. You carry yourself like someone who has seen things. He set the crate down. Just remember, the truth always comes out eventually. Nadia met his eyes briefly, then nodded once before returning to loading the truck. When Brennan and Kessler returned, they found everything properly secured and accounted for. Brennan seemed almost disappointed. Well, look at that, he said with exaggerated surprise. She can count. That is a start, I guess. The drive back to base was quieter, but the tension remained. As they unloaded at the barracks, Lieutenant Hayes approached. He was young for an officer, probably on his first real assignment, and he carried himself with the uncertain authority of someone still learning to command. Volkov, he called out, I have reviewed your file. It is pretty thin. Not much operational experience listed. I have experience, sir, Nadia said simply. Hayes frowned. Well, whatever you did before, this is a combat-ready unit. We train hard here. I need to know you can pull your weight. He glanced at Brennan and Kessler. These soldiers have been training together for 8 months. They are a team. I cannot have someone who is going to be a liability. I will not be a liability, sir, Nadia assured him. We will see, Hayes said dubiously. There is a field exercise next week. Full combat simulation. You will participate, and I will be watching closely. If you cannot keep up, I will have you transferred to a support role. Understood? Understood, sir. As Hayes walked away, Brennan chuckled. Combat simulation, he said. That is where the real soldiers separate from the pretenders. Hope you've been doing your cardio, kid. That evening, the platoon gathered for a briefing about the upcoming exercise. Captain Reeves, the company commander, outlined the scenario. It would be a 3-day operation in the field, complete with live fire exercises, tactical movements, and simulated combat scenarios. Teams would be evaluated on their performance under pressure. After the briefing, as soldiers dispersed to prepare their gear, Nadia remained in the common area, methodically checking her equipment. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic. She inspected every piece with a thoroughness that went beyond standard procedure. Kessler watched from across the room. Look at her, she said to another soldier, acting like she is preparing for the real thing. It is just a training exercise, sweetheart. No need to be so dramatic. Better to be prepared, Nadia said without looking up. Oh, she speaks, Kessler mocked. Tell me, Volkov, what exactly are you preparing for? You think this is going to be like the movies? All dramatic and heroic? I think it is better to take training seriously, Nadia replied evenly. A soldier named Torres, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. She's right, you know. Training like it is real keeps you sharp. Brennan laughed. Torres, do not tell me you are buying into the rookie's act. She probably read that in some manual. Nadia finished her inspection and began cleaning her weapon. The movements of her hands were smooth, automatic, the kind of muscle memory that came from countless repetitions. She disassembled the rifle with practiced efficiency, cleaned each component, and reassembled it in under 2 minutes. It was faster than standard qualification time, but she did not call attention to it. Torres noticed, though. That was quick, he observed. Practice, Nadia said simply. As the evening wore on and soldiers drifted off to their bunks, Nadia remained awake, sitting on her footlocker in the dim light. She stared at nothing in particular, her expression distant. The barracks were quiet now, filled with the soft sounds of sleeping soldiers. In the stillness, the weight she carried seemed almost visible, a heaviness in the set of her shoulders, a guardedness in her posture, even when alone. Tomorrow would bring more of the same, she knew. More doubt, more dismissal, more testing. She had endured worse. Much worse. The scars hidden beneath her uniform were testament to that. But knowing what lay ahead did not make the present any easier. It only made her more determined to remain silent, to let her actions speak when the time came, to protect the truth she carried until circumstances forced her hand. The days leading up to the field exercise were filled with preparation drills that seemed designed to expose weakness. Sergeant Holloway pushed the platoon hard, running them through combat scenarios, equipment checks, and physical conditioning that left even the experienced soldiers exhausted by evening. Nadia kept pace without complaint, but her silence only seemed to irritate Brennan more. During a tactical movement drill, he deliberately positioned himself behind her, offering loud commentary for the benefit of others. "Watch out, everyone," he called out. "The rookie is going to show us how it is done." Probably learned all about tactical movement from a correspondence course. Kessler laughed from her position. Maybe she watched a lot of war movies. That counts as training, right? Lieutenant Hayes observed from a distance, his expression skeptical. He made notes on a clipboard, occasionally shaking his head. When the drill concluded, he called Nadia over. "Volkov, your form is adequate, but you are hesitant," he said. "In combat, hesitation gets people killed. You need to move with more confidence. Maybe this assignment is not right for you." "I will work on it, sir," Nadia replied. "See that you do," Hayes said curtly. "I am not convinced you belong in a combat unit." That afternoon brought weapons qualification at the firing range. It was standard procedure, but for Nadia, it represented a potential problem. She could shoot. She could shoot very well. But drawing attention to that particular skill set would raise questions she was not ready to answer. The platoon lined up at the range, and Sergeant Holloway briefed them on the qualification standards. "You need to hit 30 out of 40 targets to pass," he said. "Anything less, and you remediate until you get it right." He looked directly at Nadia. "Some of you might find this challenging." Brennan went first, his shots confident and strong. He qualified with 34 hits, earning approving nods from Holloway. Kessler followed with 32. Torres managed 36, the highest score so far. When Nadia stepped up to the line, the entire platoon seemed to pause to watch. Brennan crossed his arms, a satisfied smirk on his face. "This should be entertaining," he muttered. Nadia loaded her weapon, her hands steady. She took her shooting stance, and for a moment, muscle memory threatened to take over completely. She could feel the familiar weight of the rifle, the way her body naturally aligned, the breathing pattern that had become as automatic as her heartbeat. She fired her first shot and hit the target's center mass. Not bullseye, but solid. She continued, deliberately placing her shots with careful control. Not too good, not too bad. She needed to pass without standing out. When the ceasefire was called, Holloway checked her targets. 31, he announced. "Barely qualified. You need to practice more, Volkov." "Yes, Sergeant," Nadia said, relief hidden behind her neutral expression. But Torres had been watching closely. He approached her as they cleared the range. "You pulled that last mag," he said quietly. "I saw it. You were shooting better at the start, then you started compensating." Nadia looked at him, measuring whether he was a threat or simply observant. "Sometimes nerves affect performance," she said. Torres studied her for a long moment. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe you are not who you are pretending to be." Before she could respond, Brennan called out, "Hey, Torres, stop flirting with the rookie and help load the equipment." That evening, as the platoon prepared for the next day's training, Captain Reeves made an unexpected appearance at the barracks. He called everyone to attention and stood at the front of the room with an announcement. "Change of plans for the field exercise," he said. "We're going to make it more interesting. Instead of standard teams, I am mixing up the squads. I want to see how you adapt with different personnel." He began reading off assignments. When he announced that Nadia would be teamed with Brennan, Kessler, and Torres, Brennan groaned audibly. "Sir, with respect," he said, "we have been training as a cohesive unit. Adding someone inexperienced could compromise our performance." "That is exactly the point," Reeves replied. "Real combat does not give you ideal conditions. You work with who you have. Besides, it is just training. Unless you are saying you cannot handle a simple exercise with a new team member?" Brennan's jaw tightened. "No, sir. We can handle it. Good, Reeve said, because your team has been assigned one of the more challenging scenarios. You will be conducting a simulated rescue operation in hostile territory. I expect excellence. After the captain left, Brennan turned on Nadia. Great, he said. Just perfect. Now when we fail, everyone will know it is because of you. We will not fail, Nadia said quietly. Oh really, Brennan shot back. And what makes you so confident? You barely qualified on the range today. You have shown nothing that suggests you can handle a complex operation. I will do my part, Nadia assured him. Your part, Kessler interjected, is to stay out of the way and not get us all marked down. Can you manage that? Nadia met her eyes steadily. I can manage more than you think. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Torres stepped between them. Look, we are stuck together whether we like it or not. We should at least go over the mission parameters and figure out assignments. Brennan reluctantly agreed, and the four of them gathered around a table to review the exercise scenario. As they discussed tactics and responsibilities, Nadia remained mostly quiet, listening intently. But occasionally she would offer a suggestion, a small tactical insight that showed deeper understanding than anyone expected from a supposed rookie. Each time she spoke, Torres noticed. Each time, he became more convinced that there was far more to Corporal Nadia Volkov than anyone realized. And each time, he wondered what she was hiding and, more importantly, why. The night before the field exercise, Nadia could not sleep. She sat on her bunk in the darkness, listening to the breathing of the other soldiers around her. Her mind wandered to places she tried to keep locked away, memories that surfaced despite her best efforts to suppress them. The scars on her body told stories she had no intention of sharing. Each one represented a moment when everything had hung in the balance, when decisions made in split seconds had meant the difference between life and death. The purple hearts in the wooden box at the bottom of her footlocker were not decorations to her. They were reminders of pain, of loss, of sacrifices that had cost more than anyone in this barracks could understand. She rose quietly and walked to the latrine, splashing cold water on her face. When she looked up at the mirror, she barely recognized the reflection staring back at her. She looked young, untested, exactly what everyone assumed. The physical wounds had healed, mostly, but the weight of what she carried inside made her feel centuries old. When she returned to the barracks, Torres was awake, sitting on his bunk. He nodded to her silently, and she nodded back. No words were exchanged, but something passed between them, an understanding that some nights were harder than others. Morning came too quickly. The platoon assembled at 0500, gear loaded and ready. Captain Reeves addressed them one final time before they deployed to the training area. This exercise will test everything you have learned, he said. Communication, tactics, endurance, and adaptability. Evaluators will be watching constantly. How you perform here reflects on this entire company. Do not let me down. The teams loaded into transport vehicles and headed out to the sprawling training grounds that mimicked hostile territory. The scenario was complex. A high-value target needed extraction from an enemy-held position, with opposing forces actively hunting the rescue team. Brennan immediately asserted himself as team leader, despite no official designation. Listen up, he said as they moved into position. Kessler, you are on point. Torres, you cover our 6. And Volkov, you stay in the middle where we can keep an eye on you. Do not touch anything. Do not make any decisions. Just follow orders. Got it. Understood, Nadia replied. They moved through the dense forest terrain, Kessler leading with aggressive confidence. But within the first hour, problems emerged. She was moving too fast, not checking her corners properly, and her radio discipline was sloppy. Nadia noticed immediately, but said nothing. Torres noticed too. He caught Nadia's eye, and she saw the concern there. They both knew Kessler was making mistakes that would be costly in real combat, but Brennan seemed oblivious, too focused on maintaining his authority to see the tactical errors. When they reached their first checkpoint, they encountered the opposing force sooner than expected. Blank ammunition cracked through the air, and smoke grenades created chaos. Kessler, caught in the open, froze for a critical second. Nadia moved without thinking. She grabbed Kessler's vest and pulled her behind cover just as an evaluator marked where she had been standing. "Kill shot," the evaluator announced, pointing at the spot. Kessler would have been eliminated if not for the intervention. Kessler shook off Nadia's hand angrily. "I had it under control," she snapped. "You were exposed," Nadia said simply. Brennan's face was red with frustration. "Volkov, I told you to follow orders, not play hero. You could have gotten yourself marked out." But she did not, Torres interjected. "She saved Kessler from elimination. Maybe we should reconsider the formation." "We are not reconsidering anything," Brennan insisted. "We stick to the plan." They continued, but the dynamic had shifted. Torres began positioning himself closer to Nadia, and even Kessler seemed less hostile, though she would not admit it. As they navigated deeper into hostile territory, the scenarios became more complex. At one point, they needed to cross an open area with limited cover. Brennan studied the terrain, clearly uncertain about the best approach. Nadia watched him struggle with the decision, knowing exactly what needed to be done but hesitant to speak up. Finally, Torres addressed her directly. "What do you think, Volkov?" Brennan whipped around. "She does not think. She is here to learn." But Nadia spoke anyway, her voice quiet but firm. "The depression 30 meters to the east provides better concealment. If we move in pairs, using the tree line as cover, we minimize exposure time. The gully looks faster, but it is a natural funnel point. That is where they will expect us." Brennan stared at her. "And how would you know what they expect?" "Because it is what I would do," Nadia said, then immediately regretted revealing even that much. There was a moment of tense silence. Torres looked at her with increased interest. Kessler's expression showed confusion mixed with reluctant respect. Brennan's face cycled through several emotions before settling on stubborn pride. "We're going through the gully," he announced. "That is final." Torres opened his mouth to argue, but Nadia shook her head slightly. It was not worth the fight. They would learn soon enough. As predicted, when they entered the gully, they walked straight into an ambush. The opposing force had set up perfectly, and within seconds, evaluators were marking casualties. Brennan was marked first, then Kessler. Torres managed to find cover, and Nadia had already anticipated the ambush, positioning herself where she could respond. For a moment, her training took over completely. She moved with fluid precision, her actions those of someone who had been in real firefights, who understood combat not from manuals but from experience. She suppressed the enemy position with covering fire while Torres repositioned, and together they managed to extract from a kill zone. But the damage was done. 2 team members eliminated, and the entire scenario compromised. As they regrouped at the fallback point, Brennan was furious, though notably quiet about assigning blame. He knew whose plan had failed. Kessler looked at Nadia differently now. "Where did you learn to move like that?" she asked, her earlier mockery replaced with genuine curiosity. "Training," Nadia said, her standard deflection. "That was not training," Torres said firmly. "That was experience." Before the conversation could continue, their radio crackled with new orders. The scenario was evolving, and they needed to adapt. But something had changed within the team. The easy dismissal of Nadia was no longer quite so easy. Questions were forming, and eventually, those questions would demand answers. The second day of the field exercise brought rain, cold, and relentless. The team had bivouacked overnight in a defensive position, taking shifts on watch. When Nadia's turn came, she sat in the darkness with practiced stillness, her eyes scanning the tree line with a vigilance that came from knowing what could emerge from shadows. Torres took the watch after her, and as they switched positions, he spoke in a low voice. "You do not sleep much, do you?" "I sleep enough," Nadia replied. He nodded slowly. "I have seen that look before, on guys coming back from deployment. The ones who saw heavy action." He paused. "You're carrying something, Volkov. Something big." Nadia did not respond, simply moved back to her position and closed her eyes, though sleep remained elusive. By morning, the rain had intensified. Brennan reviewed their modified orders with poorly concealed frustration. The scenario had shifted. Their target extraction point had been compromised, and they needed to navigate through enemy-controlled territory to reach an alternate location. With 2 team members already marked as casualties in the simulation, they were operating shorthanded. "This is a mess," Kessler muttered, wringing water from her jacket. "We should request scenario reset." "No resets in combat," Torres said quietly. "We adapt and overcome." Brennan shot him a look, but said nothing. The truth was evident to everyone. His leadership had led them into trouble, and now they needed to find a way out. He studied the map, his confidence visibly shaken. "The terrain ahead is hostile," he said. "Multiple enemy positions between us and extraction. We need to move carefully." Nadia looked at the map over his shoulder, her tactical mind already calculating routes, timing, and risk factors. The old logging road would provide faster movement but higher exposure. The ridge line offered concealment but would cost time they might not have. Brennan noticed her attention. "You have something to say, Volkov?" "The high ground," Nadia said, pointing to the ridge. "It adds 30 minutes to our timeline, but we can observe enemy movements before committing to any approach." Brennan considered this, clearly torn between accepting good advice and maintaining his authority. Torres backed her up. "She is right. We have been reactive this entire exercise. Time to get ahead of the situation." "Fine, Brennan conceded. We take the ridge." The climb was brutal in the rain. The ground was slick, and every step required careful placement. Kessler slipped twice, and the second time, Nadia was there to steady her. Kessler acknowledged it with a brief nod, the hostility between them continuing to erode. When they reached the ridge, Nadia moved to the overlook without being asked. She scanned the valley below with practiced efficiency, her eyes picking out details that others missed. "There," she said, indicating a position. 2-man patrol moving east. "And there, another element setting up an observation post." "How can you see that far in this rain?" Kessler asked, genuine surprise in her voice. "Practice," Nadia said, but the explanation was wearing thin even to her own ears. Torres pulled out binoculars and confirmed what Nadia had spotted with her naked eyes. "She's right," he said. "All of it." Brennan took the binoculars and verified for himself. His expression shifted, some internal calculation taking place. "Okay," he said slowly. "We wait for the patrol to clear, then move through the gap in their coverage." They held position for 20 minutes, watching the enemy patterns. During the wait, Kessler moved closer to Nadia. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. Nadia tensed slightly. "What?" "Your file," Kessler continued. "I looked at it. It does not say much, just that you were reassigned after medical leave." "What happened?" "Nothing worth discussing," Nadia replied. "Come on," Kessler pressed. "Nobody gets moved around without a story." "What was it? Training accident? Injury?" "Just drop it," Nadia said, her tone final. But Torres had been listening. "Not a training accident," he said thoughtfully. "Combat injury. That is what medical discharge waiver means, right? You got hurt downrange." Nadia did not respond, her jaw tight. Brennan looked at her with new eyes. "Wait, you deployed? Where?" "Does it matter?" Nadia said. "Yeah, it matters," Brennan insisted. "If you have actual combat experience, why hide it? Why let everyone think you are just a rookie?" "Because I am not here to prove anything to anyone," Nadia said firmly. "I am here to do my job." The radio interrupted their conversation. "All teams, new development in scenario. High-value target is mobile and heading toward your sector. Intercept and secure for extraction." The dynamic changed immediately. This was no longer just navigation and avoidance. They needed to actively engage and secure an objective while hostile forces converged on the same location. The complexity had just multiplied. Brennan looked at his team, then at Nadia. His pride warred with pragmatism, and for the first time, pragmatism won. "Volkov," he said, "you clearly have more experience than you let on. What do you recommend?" Nadia felt the weight of the moment. She had tried to stay invisible, tried to avoid this exact situation. But circumstances were forcing her hand, step by step, decision by decision. "We need to move fast," she said. "The target will be in this valley in approximately 12 minutes, based on their reported speed and direction. There are 3 possible routes they might take. We position at the convergence point here, where all 3 routes intersect. We set up overwatch positions and establish a security perimeter before they arrive. Torres nodded approvingly. That is solid tactical thinking. Kessler added, how do you know they will come through that convergence point? Because it is the only terrain feature that offers cover while maintaining their reported heading, Nadia explained. Any other route exposes them to observation or adds significant time. They will choose this path. Brennan studied the map, then looked at Nadia with a mixture of respect and confusion. Who are you? He asked quietly. Just a soldier trying to complete the mission, Nadia replied. They moved out quickly, following Nadia's plan. As they descended from the ridge, the rain began to let up slightly, though the ground remained treacherous. Nadia led now, not through any formal transfer of authority, but through the natural deference that came from demonstrated competence. When they reached the convergence point, they had 7 minutes to prepare. Nadia positioned each team member with precise instructions, creating interlocking fields of observation and fire. Her commands were clear, confident, and rooted in experience that could no longer be denied. As they waited in position, Torres spoke quietly to her. When this is over, we need to talk. Really talk. Nadia did not respond, but she knew he was right. The facade was crumbling. Soon, the truth would emerge whether she wanted it to or not. The only question was how much longer she could delay the inevitable. The high-value target appeared exactly where and when Nadia had predicted. 3 opposing force members escorted a player wearing a red armband, moving through the convergence point with tactical awareness but not enough caution. They had not expected anyone to anticipate their route so precisely. Nadia's hand signals were economical and clear. She had Torres and Kessler establish a crossfire, while she and Brennan prepared a close distance for the capture. The coordination was flawless, a testament to her ability to position forces for maximum advantage. When they initiated contact, the opposing force was caught completely off guard. Within 30 seconds, all 3 escorts were marked as casualties by evaluators, and the high-value target was secured without a single member of Nadia's team being eliminated. The evaluator, observing their sector, spoke into his radio. Blue team has successfully secured objective with 0 casualties. Textbook execution. As they began moving the target toward extraction, Brennan walked beside Nadia. That was impressive, he admitted. Really impressive. Where did you learn to coordinate like that? Experience, Nadia said, her usual deflection. Stop with the non-answers, Brennan pressed. Nobody picks up that level of tactical awareness from basic training or even standard deployment. You move like someone who has done this dozens of times. In real situations, not exercises. Before Nadia could respond, hostile fire erupted from an unexpected direction. The scenario had evolved again, with enemy reinforcements attempting to recapture their high-value target. The team dove for cover as blank rounds snapped overhead. They are flanking, Torres shouted, identifying the enemy movement pattern. Nadia assessed the situation instantly. The opposing force was executing a well-coordinated maneuver, attempting to envelope their position from 2 sides. Standard defensive tactics would not work here. They needed to be aggressive. Brennan, suppressing fire on that ridge line, Nadia commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos with natural authority. Kessler, move the target to that depression 30 meters west. Torres, you are with me. We are going to collapse their flank before they complete the envelope. She did not wait for acknowledgement. She simply moved, and Torres followed without question. They advanced on the enemy flank with coordinated precision, using terrain and timing to catch the opposing force in an exposed position. Within minutes, the enemy maneuver was disrupted and half their element was marked as casualties. The remaining opposing force withdrew, recognizing they had lost tactical advantage. Nadia's team secured the area and continued toward extraction, arriving 10 minutes ahead of the estimated timeline. Captain Reeves was at the extraction point personally, observing with several evaluators. As the team arrived with their objectives secured, he studied them with an unreadable expression. Report, he ordered. Brennan, still processing everything that had happened, glanced at Nadia before speaking. Sir, we encountered multiple hostile elements, adapted tactics based on terrain and enemy movement, secured the high-value target with 0 friendly casualties, and successfully repelled a counterattack during extraction movement. Reeves nodded slowly. And who was calling tactical decisions for your team? There was a pause. Brennan could have claimed credit. Everyone expected him to. But something had changed during the exercise, something fundamental. Corporal Volkov, sir, Brennan said. She demonstrated superior tactical awareness and leadership throughout the operation. Reeves turned his attention fully to Nadia. Volkov, step forward. Nadia approached, standing at attention. The evaluators tell me you executed a near-perfect operation, Reeves said. They also tell me you showed tactical proficiency far beyond what would be expected from someone with your supposed experience level. Care to explain that? I follow my training, sir, Nadia replied. Reeves studied her for a long moment. Your training? He repeated. Corporal, I have been in this army for 18 years. I know the difference between someone who learned tactics from a manual and someone who learned them through application under fire. Which one are you? Nadia felt the walls closing in. The question hung in the air, demanding an answer that she had tried so hard to avoid giving. Sir, with respect, my record speaks for itself, she said carefully. Does it? Reeve challenged. Because I took a closer look at your file after Lieutenant Hayes expressed concerns about your placement. And you know what I found interesting? Large sections are redacted. Classified. Why would a supposedly junior soldier have classified service history? The other team members were listening now, their expressions ranging from confusion to dawning realization. Torres looked like he had just solved a puzzle. Kessler's eyes were wide with surprise. Even Brennan seemed genuinely shocked. I am not at liberty to discuss classified information, sir, Nadia said, her voice steady despite the pressure. Reeves nodded. I suspected as much. So let me ask you a different question. How many deployments have you actually completed? Nadia hesitated, then answered truthfully. 4, sir. 4, Reeves repeated, loud enough for everyone to hear. And your rank is corporal. That seems unusual for someone with 4 deployments. Unless there is more to the story. Lieutenant Hayes had joined the group and was listening with increasing interest. Sir, are you saying Volkov has been misrepresenting her experience? No, Reeves said. I'm saying she has been deliberately downplaying it. There is a difference. The question is why. All eyes turned to Nadia. She felt exposed in a way that combat had never made her feel. In firefights, she knew what to do. This was different. This required revealing truths she had buried deep. Permission to speak freely, sir, she said quietly. Granted, Reeves replied. I came to this unit hoping to serve quietly, Nadia began. I did not want attention. I did not want questions. I just wanted to do my job and move forward. But I recognize that my attempt to remain invisible has created problems and confusion. For that, I apologize. Torres stepped forward. Sir, whatever her reasons, her tactical decisions today probably saved this team from failure. She demonstrated leadership and competence that frankly exceeded most of ours. I agree, Kessler added, surprising everyone, including herself. She knew things we did not, saw things we missed. We would not have completed this mission without her. Brennan nodded reluctantly. She's right, sir. I let my ego get in the way of recognizing genuine skill. Whatever Volkov's story is, she earned respect today. Reeves looked at each of them, then back to Nadia. Volkov, when we return to base, you and I are going to have a detailed conversation about your service history. I suspect there are things about you that this entire company should know. But for now, you led your team to the most successful completion of any scenario today. Well done. Thank you, sir, Nadia said. As they loaded into transport vehicles for the return to base, the atmosphere had shifted completely. The mockery was gone, replaced by curiosity and respect. But Nadia knew this was only the beginning. The questions would multiply now. The truth she had tried to protect was demanding to be revealed. And soon, very soon, everyone would know exactly who Corporal Nadia Volkov really was. The ride back to base was quiet, but the silence carried weight. Soldiers who had dismissed Nadia as a liability now stole glances at her, reassessing everything they thought they knew. She sat near the back of the transport, staring out at the passing landscape, knowing that the comfortable anonymity she had maintained was gone forever. When they arrived at base, Captain Reeves did not waste time. "Volkov, my office, 1 hour," he ordered. "Bring your complete service record." "Yes, sir," Nadia replied. In the barracks, the atmosphere was electric with speculation. Word had spread quickly about the field exercise results, and soldiers from other platoons were asking questions. Torres, Kessler, and even Brennan found themselves deflecting inquiries they could not answer. Nadia returned to her footlocker and retrieved the wooden box she had kept hidden. She held it for a moment, feeling its weight, both physical and emotional. Inside were the medals she had never wanted to wear, the commendations that told a story she wished she could forget. Torres approached quietly. "Whatever is in that box," he said, "I'm guessing it is going to surprise a lot of people." "Probably," Nadia acknowledged. "For what it is worth," Torres continued, "I do not think less of you for keeping secrets. Everyone has reasons for the things they do. But I think maybe it is time to let people see who you really are." "I'm not sure I know who that is anymore," Nadia said softly. An hour later, she stood outside Captain Reeves' office, the wooden box under her arm along with her service documentation. She knocked, and his voice called her in. The office was sparse and functional. Reeves sat behind his desk, and to Nadia's surprise, Lieutenant Colonel Morrison was also present. She recognized him from the supply depot, the grizzled sergeant who had seen something in her that first day. Except he was not a supply sergeant. That had been a cover, or perhaps a test. "At ease, Corporal," Reeves said. "Have a seat." Nadia sat, placing the wooden box on her lap. "Lieutenant Colonel Morrison is here because he serves as our battalion intelligence officer," Reeves explained. "He also has the clearance necessary to discuss certain aspects of your service record that I do not." Morrison leaned forward. "When you came through supply that first day, I knew I recognized something in you," he said. "Took me a while to place it, but eventually I remembered. I had seen your face in briefings. Classified briefings about operations most people will never know happened." Nadia said nothing, waiting. Reeves opened a file on his desk. "This is the unredacted version of your service record," he said. "It took some pulling of strings to access it, but what I am reading here explains everything. For deployments, all to active combat zones. Specialized training in long-range reconnaissance and precision engagement. Multiple commendations for actions under fire." He paused, looking directly at her. "And 5 Purple Hearts. 5 separate occasions where you were wounded in combat and chose to return to duty after recovery." The room fell silent. Even Morrison, who knew the basics, seemed affected by hearing it stated so plainly. "Nadia," Reeves said, using her first name for the first time, "why did you not tell anyone? Why let people treat you like a rookie when you have more combat experience than half this company combined?" Nadia took a breath, choosing her words carefully. "Because every time someone looks at these medals, they see courage or heroism. But when I look at them, I see failure. I see the moments I did not move fast enough, did not shoot accurately enough, did not make the right call quickly enough. Each one represents a time I almost did not come home. And the people who were with me during those missions, some of them did not come home at all." Her voice remained steady, but the emotion beneath was undeniable. "I did not want to be defined by what happened downrange," she continued. "I did not want people asking questions about operations I cannot discuss or treating me differently because of things I did when I had no other choice. I just wanted to be a regular soldier, doing regular duty, without the weight of those memories defining every interaction." Morrison spoke gently. "But you cannot run from what you have experienced. It is part of who you are, whether you wear the medals or hide them." "I know," Nadia admitted. "I just was not ready to accept that yet." Reeves closed the file. "Here's my position," he said. "This company needs experienced soldiers who can lead, especially in the increasingly complex environment we are operating in. You have demonstrated exceptional tactical ability and judgment. I want you to consider accepting a position as a team leader and beginning the process toward promotion." "Sir, I appreciate that," Nadia said, "but I am not sure I am the right person for leadership." My focus has always been mission completion, not managing people. Those are not mutually exclusive, Reeves countered. In fact, the best leaders understand that managing people effectively is essential to mission success. Think about it. That is an order, not a request. Yes, sir, Nadia replied. One more thing, Reeves added. The company is conducting a formal ceremony next week for various commendations and promotions. I want you to attend in your dress uniform, with your full awards display. No more hiding, Corporal. This company needs to know who you really are, and frankly, you need to stop running from your own service. Nadia felt her stomach tighten, but she nodded. Understood, sir. When she left the office, she found Torres waiting in the hallway. Well, he asked. They know, Nadia said simply. And? And I'm going to have to stop pretending to be someone I am not. Torres smiled slightly. Good, because the person you actually are is pretty impressive. Back in the barracks, word had somehow already begun to spread. The rumor mill in military units was faster than any official communication, and while details were scarce, soldiers knew something significant had been revealed about the quiet corporal who had outperformed everyone during the field exercise. Brennan approached her as she returned to her bunk. Look, he said awkwardly, I owe you an apology. I was wrong about you. Way wrong. You did not know, Nadia said. That is not an excuse, Brennan replied. I made assumptions based on appearance and did not give you a fair chance. That was on me, and I am sorry. Kessler joined them. We all were wrong, she admitted. And I am sorry too. You could have thrown it in our faces at any point, but you did not. That shows more character than I demonstrated. Nadia looked at them both. Everyone makes judgments based on limited information. I could have been more forthcoming. We all have things to learn. As evening settled over the base, Nadia sat on her bunk, the wooden box open before her. 5 purple hearts, arranged in a row. Each one a memory she had tried to bury. Each one a reminder of pain and loss and survival against odds that should have been impossible. She ran her fingers over the metals, feeling the cool metal, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself to remember. Not to dwell or to wallow, but to acknowledge. These were part of her story, whether she wanted them to be or not. The question was not whether to accept that truth, but how to carry it forward without letting it define her completely. The answer, she realized, was still forming. But at least now, she did not have to carry it alone in silence. The week leading up to the ceremony passed in a strange blur of normalcy and tension. Nadia continued her regular duties, but the dynamic had fundamentally changed. Soldiers who had once dismissed her now sought her input. During training exercises, officers deferred to her tactical suggestions. The anonymity she had craved was replaced by a visibility she still struggled to accept. Lieutenant Hayes approached her during morning physical training. Volkov, I owe you an apology, he said as they ran side by side. I questioned your capabilities and nearly had you transferred. I was wrong, and that failure of judgment reflects poorly on my leadership. You made decisions based on the information available, Nadia replied, her breathing steady despite the pace. I did not give you reason to think otherwise. That is generous, Hayes said, but it does not excuse my assumptions. I am working on being a better officer. If you have any guidance, I would welcome it. The request surprised her. Give people the benefit of doubt before making final assessments, she offered. Sometimes the quietest person in the room has the most to offer. Hayes nodded, committing the advice to memory. Noted. That afternoon, Sergeant Holloway pulled her aside during weapons maintenance. Captain Reeves told me about your service record, he said bluntly. 5 Purple Hearts. For deployments. Specialized operations. Makes me realize I was a complete jackass when you arrived. You treated me like any other new soldier, Nadia said. No, Holloway corrected. I treated you like you were less than. That is different. You carried yourself with respect and discipline despite my attitude. That takes strength I did not recognize. He extended his hand. Fresh start, Volkov. I would be honored to train alongside someone with your experience. Nadia shook his hand, seeing genuine respect in his eyes. Fresh start, she agreed. But not everyone was comfortable with the revelation. Some soldiers became awkward around her, uncertain how to interact with someone whose service history was extraordinary. Others peppered her with questions she could not answer about classified operations. The attention was exhausting in ways that combat had never been. Torres seemed to sense her discomfort. "You can say no," he reminded her when another soldier approached with invasive questions. "You do not owe anyone your story." "I know," Nadia said, "but if I shut everyone down, I am just hiding again in a different way." "There is a difference between privacy and hiding," Torres observed. "You're allowed to have boundaries." The night before the ceremony, sleep eluded Nadia completely. She lay in her bunk, listening to the familiar sounds of the barracks, trying to prepare herself mentally for what was coming. Her dress uniform hung nearby, pressed and perfect. The wooden box with her medals sat on the shelf above her locker, waiting. Around 1200, she gave up on sleep and went outside. The night air was cool and clear, stars visible above the base. She walked toward the training grounds, seeking the solitude of empty spaces. She found Torres already there, sitting on a bench near the obstacle course. "Cannot sleep either?" he asked as she approached. "Not really," Nadia admitted, sitting beside him. They sat in comfortable silence for a while before Torres spoke. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Depends on the question." "The 5 purple hearts," Torres said carefully. "That means 5 times you were wounded badly enough to receive recognition. How do you carry that? Not the medals themselves, but the weight of knowing you survived when others might not have." Nadia was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, she finally said, "I am still figuring that out. Some days it feels manageable. Other days it feels crushing. I question every decision I made downrange, wondering if I could have done something differently, something that would have changed outcomes for the people who did not make it home." "Survivor's guilt," Torres said softly. "Is that what they call it?" Nadia replied. "Feels more like a constant reckoning. An endless series of what-ifs that have no answers." Torres nodded understanding. "My brother was infantry," he said. 2 deployments. He came back different, quieter, carried something heavy inside that he would not talk about. I joined partly to understand what he went through, to connect with that part of his experience." "Did it work?" Nadia asked. Torres smiled sadly. "Not really, but it helped me appreciate that some experiences cannot be fully shared or understood by those who are not there. All we can do is respect the wait and not demand explanations. That is more understanding than most people manage," Nadia observed. They sat together until the sky began to lighten with pre-dawn gray. Finally, Torres stood. "Today is going to be intense," he said. "But for what it is worth, I think you are handling this with more grace than anyone could reasonably expect." "I do not feel graceful," Nadia admitted. "Harelido, Torres replied. "But you keep moving forward anyway. That counts for something." Morning brought the controlled chaos of ceremony preparation. The entire company assembled in dress uniforms, formations practiced and perfected. Families of soldiers being recognized arrived, adding civilian presence to the military precision. Media representatives were present too, documenting the event for public affairs purposes. Nadia stood in formation, her dress uniform feeling foreign after so long. The weight of her medals was different than she remembered. Not lighter, but perhaps more bearable now that they were visible rather than hidden. Captain Reeves addressed the assembly, speaking about service, dedication, and the honor of wearing the uniform. Then he began calling forward soldiers for various commendations and promotions. Each recognition was met with applause and formal salutes. Finally, he reached the moment Nadia had been dreading. "We have one more recognition today," Reeves announced. "It is not a new award, but rather an acknowledgement of service that has gone unrecognized by this company." Corporal Nadia Volkov, front and center. Nadia marched forward, her movements precise and automatic. She stood at attention before the captain. "Corporal Volkov came to us under unusual circumstances," Reeves said. "She arrived with a spar service record and allowed many of us to make assumptions about her experience and capabilities. Those assumptions were incorrect." Reeves paused for effect. "Corporal Volkov has completed 4 combat deployments in specialized roles. She has been awarded the Bronze Star for Valor, multiple Army Commendation Medals, and 5 Purple Hearts for wounds received in action. The assembly reacted with audible surprise. Soldiers who had trained alongside her exchanged glances of shock and newfound respect. Even those who had learned pieces of her story seemed affected by hearing the full accounting. Reeves continued, "She demonstrated during our recent field exercise the kind of tactical excellence and leadership that only comes from genuine combat experience. She did so without seeking recognition, without demanding special treatment, and with a humility that should serve as an example to us all." He turned to address Nadia directly. "Corporal Volkov, you have honored this company with your presence and your service. We are privileged to serve alongside you." The assembly erupted in applause. Not polite ceremonial applause, but genuine, sustained recognition. Nadia maintained her composure, standing at attention, but inside, something shifted. The burden she had carried alone was now shared, witnessed, and honored by others. It did not make the weight disappear, but somehow it made it more bearable. The applause continued for what felt like an eternity. Nadia stood rigid, fighting against the emotions threatening to overwhelm her carefully maintained composure. She had faced enemy fire with steady nerves, made life-or-death decisions in split seconds, survived injuries that should have been fatal. But standing here, publicly recognized for things she had tried to bury, felt more exposed than any combat situation ever had. When the ceremony concluded and formations were dismissed, Nadia was immediately surrounded by soldiers wanting to speak with her. Some offered congratulations. Others asked questions. A few simply wanted to shake her hand, their respect evident in their eyes. Brennan pushed through the crowd. "I need to say something," he announced loudly enough for those nearby to hear. "When you arrived, I treated you like you were nothing. I mocked you, dismissed you, and made your integration into this unit harder than it needed to be. Now I know you have more combat experience than I will probably ever have, more courage than I demonstrated, and more humility than I possess." He stood at attention. "I was wrong, and I am sorry." Publicly and sincerely. The crowd had gone quiet, watching this unexpected moment. Nadia nodded. Apology accepted. We all make mistakes in judgment. What matters is growth. Kessler stepped forward next. "Same for me," she said. "I followed Brennan's lead in treating you poorly. That was cowardly. You deserved better, and I should have been better." One by one, others who had dismissed or underestimated Nadia came forward with apologies and recognition. It was cathartic for the unit, a collective acknowledgement of failure and commitment to improvement. Eventually, Lieutenant Colonel Morrison approached, and the crowd naturally parted. "Walk with me, Corporal," he said. They moved away from the assembly area toward the quieter administrative section of the base. Morrison spoke as they walked. "I have seen a lot of soldiers in my career," he began. "Seen heroes and cowards, leaders and followers, those who rise to challenges and those who break under pressure. You're something rare, Volkov. You have all the credentials to demand respect and recognition, yet you chose humility. Why?" Nadia considered her response carefully. "Because the things I did downrange were not about glory or recognition, sir. They were about survival and completing the mission. People who seek medals usually do not understand what earning them actually costs." Morrison nodded approvingly. "That is wisdom most soldiers never achieve. But here's what I want you to understand. By hiding your experience, you denied this unit the benefit of your knowledge. Young soldiers like Lieutenant Hayes could have learned from you. Tactical decisions could have been informed by your expertise. Your humility, while admirable, was also a disservice." The observation struck Nadia deeply. She had not considered it from that perspective. "I was trying to protect myself," she admitted. "But I see your point." Going forward, Morrison said, "I want you to consider something. The battalion is establishing an advanced training program for soldiers preparing for specialized deployments. We need instructors with real experience, people who can teach not from manuals but from practical knowledge. I want you to be part of that program." "Sir, I'm not sure I am qualified to teach," Nadia protested. "You have 4 deployments of experience," Morrison countered. "You have survived situations that killed others. That alone qualifies you. But beyond that, You have the tactical mind and the communication skills necessary to pass on critical knowledge. Think about it. Lives could be saved by what you teach. I will consider it, sir, Nadia said. That is all I ask, Morrison replied. For now, enjoy your recognition. You earned it. As Morrison departed, Torres appeared. That looked like an intense conversation, he observed. You want me to teach, Nadia said, still processing the idea. You should, Torres encouraged. You're good at explaining things. Calm under pressure. Patient. Those are the qualities of a good instructor. I just want to be a regular soldier, Nadia said quietly. Torres smiled sympathetically. I do not think that option exists for you anymore. Once people know what you have done, they're going to look to you differently. You can fight that, or you can embrace it and use it to help others. Your choice. Later that afternoon, Nadia returned to the barracks to change out of her dress uniform. The wooden box sat on her bunk, medals returned to their case. She stared at them, seeing them differently now. Not as symbols of failure or reminders of pain, but as evidence of survival, resilience, and service. The perspective shift was subtle but significant. Sergeant Holloway entered the barracks. Volkov, got a minute? Of course, Sergeant. Holloway sat on the adjacent bunk, his expression serious. I have been thinking about what Captain Reeves said during the ceremony, about you demonstrating tactical excellence during the field exercise. I realized something. You were not just completing the mission. You were protecting the team, making sure we succeeded without casualties. That is leadership, whether you intended it or not. I was just trying to help, Nadia said. Exactly, Holloway replied. Real leaders do not need titles or positions. They just step up when needed. You did that naturally. He leaned forward. I know you are uncomfortable with attention, but this company needs what you can offer. Experience, judgment, tactical sense. Please do not hide that anymore. I'm trying to adjust, Nadia assured him. That is all anyone can ask, Holloway said, standing. By the way, I am running a night navigation training next week. Could use someone with your experience helping evaluate the troops. You interested? Yes, Sergeant, Nadia replied. Good, Holloway said with a slight smile. See, that was not so hard. Accepting that you have value to contribute. As evening approached, the company gathered for an informal celebration at the recreation facility. It was meant to be casual, but Nadia knew she would be the center of attention. Part of her wanted to skip it entirely, but she recognized that would be another form of hiding. When she entered, conversation paused briefly before resuming. But now the dynamic was different. People made space for her, included her naturally, treated her as a valued member of the unit rather than an outsider or curiosity. Brennan approached with 2 cups of coffee. Peace offering, he said, and a genuine question. How do you do it? Carry that much experience and responsibility without letting it show? You develop armor, Nadia said honestly. Layers of protection that keep the weight contained. But eventually, that armor becomes its own prison. I'm still learning how to remove it safely. That is the most honest thing I have heard in a while, Brennan admitted. Thank you for sharing that. As the evening progressed, Nadia found herself relaxing incrementally. The conversations were easier, the atmosphere less charged with tension. She even smiled genuinely a few times, something Torres noticed and commented on. That is good to see, he said. You smiling means maybe you are starting to accept things. Maybe, Nadia agreed. It is a process. Everything worth doing is, Torres replied. As midnight approached and the gathering wound down, Nadia walked back to the barracks under a clear sky. The stars overhead reminded her of countless nights in hostile territory, watching the same stars from very different circumstances. But tonight, for the first time in months, she felt something approaching peace. Not complete, not permanent, but present nonetheless. The journey ahead would be challenging. Learning to be visible, to share her knowledge, to accept recognition without shame. But standing here, in this moment, she felt ready to try. The past would always be part of her, but it no longer had to define her completely. She could be both the soldier who survived impossible things and the person who moved forward from them. That balance was still forming, still uncertain, but at least now she had support in finding it. 3 days after the ceremony, everything changed again. The alert came at 0400, jolting the entire base into immediate action. A real-world situation had developed. Not a training exercise, not a drill, but an actual emergency requiring immediate response. Captain Reeves assembled the company in record time. "Listen up," he said, his voice cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. "We have a developing situation approximately 40 kilometers north. A civilian research team working near the restricted training zone has gone missing. Last contact was 18 hours ago. Weather conditions are deteriorating, and local law enforcement has requested military assistance for search and rescue." He paused, letting the information sink in. "This is not a drill. This is a real mission with real stakes. We are deploying 2 teams. Alpha Team will take the western sector. Bravo Team handles eastern approach." He looked directly at Nadia. "Volkov, you will lead Bravo Team." The announcement landed like a thunderclap. Lieutenant Hayes started to protest. "Sir, perhaps someone with more time in the unit should lead." Reeves cut him off. "Volkov has more relevant experience than anyone here. She has conducted multiple search and rescue operations in hostile territory under worse conditions than we are facing. This is not up for debate." He continued issuing orders. "Bravo Team consists of Volkov, Brennan, Kessler, Torres, and Hayes. You will have 2 hours to prep and deploy. Conditions are cold, visibility is poor, and terrain is challenging. The missing team consists of 4 civilians, 2 males and 2 females, ages ranging from 25 to 47. They were conducting geological surveys and may have inadequate cold weather gear." Nadia stepped forward. "Sir, do we have their last known position and any communication logs?" Reeves handed her a folder. "Everything we have is in here. Not much, but it is a starting point." He met her eyes. "I am putting lives in your hands. Corporal, bring those civilians home." "Yes, sir," Nadia replied, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settling onto her shoulders. But this time it felt different. Not crushing, but purposeful. The team assembled in the equipment bay, moving with urgent efficiency. Nadia spread a topographical map across a table and began her briefing. "Our search area is approximately 20 square kilometers of forested terrain with significant elevation changes. Last known position was here," she said, pointing, "but given the time elapsed, they could have moved in any direction seeking shelter or trying to find their way out." "What is the priority?" Hayes asked, and for the first time, there was no condescension in his voice. Genuine deference to her expertise. "We divide the sector into zones based on most likely movement patterns," Nadia explained. "People in survival situations tend to follow terrain features. Ridgelines, valleys, water sources. We start with the highest probability areas and work systematically." She looked at each team member. "Communication is critical. We maintain radio contact at all times. If anyone finds signs of the missing team, we converge immediately. No one goes off alone." Brennan studied the map. "Weather's going to be a factor. Temperature is dropping and visibility will be limited, which means they are at serious risk if they are not adequately prepared," Nadia acknowledged. "We need to move fast, but carefully. Rushing leads to mistakes, and we cannot afford mistakes when lives are at stake." Kessler spoke up. "What about medical considerations? If they have been out there for 18 hours in these conditions, hypothermia is a real possibility." "Exactly," Nadia confirmed. "We carry full medical kits and thermal blankets. If we find them incapacitated, immediate warming and stabilization before transport." She looked at Torres. "You have the most recent combat lifesaver certification. You are our primary medical." Torres nodded. "Understood." Within 2 hours, both teams were deployed. The helicopter insertion was rough, wind buffeting the aircraft as they approached the search area. Nadia studied the terrain from above, her mind already calculating routes and probabilities. When they landed and moved into the forest, the conditions were worse than anticipated. Temperature had dropped below freezing, and a light snow had begun falling, reducing visibility significantly. But Nadia moved with confidence born from experience, her team following her lead. They established radio contact with Alpha Team and began their systematic search. Nadia positioned her team members strategically, maintaining visual and radio contact while maximizing search coverage. She moved like someone who had done this countless times, reading terrain, identifying likely shelter locations, and coordinating movements with practiced efficiency. 3 hours into the search, Torres radioed. "I have something. Tracks, recent, heading northeast toward the ridge." The team converged on Torres' position. Nadia examined the tracks carefully. For sets, she confirmed. Spacing and depth suggest they were moving slowly, possibly fatigued or injured. She followed the trail with her eyes. They're heading uphill, which is wrong if they're trying to get out. They must be disoriented or seeking high ground to signal for help. "We follow the tracks," Hayes stated, but looked to Nadia for confirmation. "We follow carefully," Nadia corrected. "Stick to the protocol. Stay together. Maintain communication. Watch for hazards." They tracked the footprints up the increasingly steep terrain. The snow was falling heavier now, threatening to obscure the trail. Nadia pushed the pace as much as safely possible, knowing that time was critical. Kessler spotted it first. "There," she called out, pointing to a small depression beneath an outcropping. "I see something." They approached cautiously. Huddled in the inadequate shelter were 4 people, dressed in civilian outdoor gear that was insufficient for the conditions. They were conscious but clearly hypothermic, shivering violently and barely responsive. "Medical emergency," Nadia called over the radio. "For civilians located, all showing signs of severe hypothermia. We need immediate extraction." Torres moved in immediately, assessing conditions while the team distributed thermal blankets and activated chemical heating packs. Brennan established a windbreak using emergency tarps. Kessler got warm fluids ready from their supplies. Hayes coordinated with the extraction helicopter. Nadia took charge of the civilians, speaking calmly and reassuringly. "You are safe now. We are military, here to help. Stay with us. Help is coming." One of the civilians, a woman in her 30s, managed to speak through chattering teeth. "We got lost," she said. "Could not find the trail. Thought we could reach high ground." "You did the right thing seeking shelter," Nadia assured her. "You survived. That is what matters." The extraction helicopter arrived within 20 minutes. The team worked together flawlessly, securing the civilians for transport and ensuring medical stabilization. As the helicopter lifted off with the rescued researchers, Nadia allowed herself a moment of relief. "Alpha Team, this is Bravo Team," she radioed. "Civilians secured and extracted. All team members accounted for. Mission successful." Captain Reeves' voice came over the radio. "Outstanding work, Bravo Team. Return to base for debriefing." As they hiked back to the landing zone, Brennan walked beside Nadia. "That was textbook leadership," he said. "Clear decisions, perfect execution, everyone home safe. This is what you've been doing all along, is it not? Saving lives under pressure." "It is what I was trained to do," Nadia replied. "No, Brennan corrective. It is who you are. There's a difference." The debriefing took place in the battalion conference room, with senior leadership present. Captain Reeves led the session, but it quickly became clear that this was more than a standard after-action review. Lieutenant Colonel Morrison sat at the head of the table, along with the battalion commander, Colonel Parrish, a stern woman with 30 years of service. "Corporal Volkov," Colonel Parrish began, "walk us through your decision-making process from deployment to successful extraction." Nadia stood and approached the map display. "We began with probability-based search patterns, focusing on terrain features that would attract disoriented civilians. When Specialist Torres located tracks, we followed protocol for tracking while maintaining team cohesion and communication. Upon locating the civilians, we prioritized immediate medical stabilization over rapid extraction, recognizing that moving hypothermic patients without proper preparation could be fatal." She continued detailing each decision point, explaining her reasoning with clarity and precision. The room listened intently, senior officers nodding at various points. When she finished, Colonel Parrish leaned back. "That was exceptional tactical and leadership performance under real-world pressure. Your team executed flawlessly because you gave them clear direction based on experience and sound judgment. She paused. How long have you been a corporal, Volkov? 3 years, ma'am. And before your current assignment, you were doing what? Exactly? Specialized operations, ma'am. Details are classified. Parrish nodded. I have read your full file. What I want to know is why someone with your qualifications and experience has remained at the E4 level for 3 years. Nadia chose her words carefully. I was recovering from injuries, ma'am, and I was not certain I wanted to continue serving in a leadership capacity. The weight of command, of making decisions that affect lives, became difficult to carry. The room was silent. It was a level of honesty that was rarely expressed, especially to senior leadership. But Nadia felt tired of deflecting, tired of hiding behind partial truths. I understand that, Parrish said, her tone softer. Combat changes people. The burden of responsibility under fire is something most soldiers never experience. But here is what I observed from today's mission. You did not hesitate. When lives were at stake, you led decisively and effectively. That suggests to me that you are ready to carry that weight again. She opened a folder. I am promoting you to sergeant, effective immediately. Additionally, I am assigning you as team leader for Bravo Squad and enrolling you in the advanced leadership course starting next month. You will also be part of the instructor cadre for the specialized training program Lieutenant Colonel Morrison mentioned. Ma'am, that is a significant responsibility, Nadia said. Yes, it is, Parrish agreed. And you're going to accept it. That is an order, Sergeant Volkov. The formal use of her new rank made it real. Yes, ma'am, Nadia replied. After the debriefing, Nadia walked back toward the company area in a daze. Sergeant, team leader, instructor, everything she had tried to avoid was now her official duty. But instead of the crushing anxiety she expected, she felt something different. Purpose, maybe, or acceptance. Torres caught up with her. Congratulations, Sergeant, he said with a grin. Well deserved. I'm not sure I am ready for this, Nadia admitted. You just led a successful rescue operation in terrible conditions with 0 casualties, Torres pointed out. If that does not demonstrate readiness, I do not know what does. They reached the barracks where the rest of Bravo team was waiting. When Nadia entered, they stood at attention. Kessler spoke first. We heard about the promotion, Sergeant. Congratulations. Thank you, Nadia said, still adjusting to the new title. Brennan stepped forward. I know I gave you hell when you first arrived, he said. But after today, after seeing you lead under real pressure, I want you to know I am honored to serve under your command. The sentiment was echoed by the others. Hayes added, I learned more from watching you work today than from my entire officer training. I hope you will be patient with me as I continue to learn. Nadia looked at each of them, seeing genuine respect and trust in their eyes. These were the people she would be responsible for, whose lives would depend on her decisions. The weight of that responsibility was real, but so was the strength she saw in them. They were not burdens to carry, but teammates to lead. We are going to be a good team, she said, but I need your honesty. If I make a bad call, if you see something I miss, speak up. Leadership is not about one person having all the answers. It is about everyone contributing their best. That is good leadership philosophy, a voice said from the doorway. Sergeant Holloway entered, a slight smile on his weathered face. Just got word about your promotion, Volkov. About damn time. He extended his hand. Welcome to the NCO Corps. We need more leaders who understand that strength comes from empowering others, not dominating them. Thank you, Sergeant, Nadia said, shaking his hand. The company threw an impromptu celebration that evening. It was not large or elaborate, just soldiers gathering to acknowledge one of their own achieving a milestone. But the warmth and genuine camaraderie were unmistakable. Captain Reeves appeared midway through and pulled Nadia aside. I want you to know something, he said. When you first arrived, I saw a soldier who was clearly running from something. I do not know what, but I could see the weight. Today, I saw a leader who has stopped running and started facing forward. That transformation is significant, and I am proud to have witnessed it. I'm still figuring things out, sir, Nadia admitted. We all are, Reeves replied. The day you think you have it all figured out is the day you stop growing. Keep questioning, keep learning, keep leading with the same integrity you showed today. As the evening progressed, Nadia found a quiet moment on the barrack steps. She looked up at the stars, the same stars she had watched from countless forward operating bases in hostile territory. But tonight, they seemed different. Less lonely, perhaps. Or maybe she was less lonely watching them. Torres joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering one. "Thanks," Nadia accepted it gratefully. "You know," Torres said after a moment, "I have been thinking about something you said during the mission. About how people in survival situations tend to follow terrain features. There was a deeper truth in that observation." "How so?" Nadia asked. "We are all in survival situations, in our own ways," Torres explained, "following the paths that seem most likely to lead to safety. Sometimes those paths are right, sometimes they are not. But we keep moving because staying still means giving up." Nadia considered this. "I spent a long time following the wrong path," she said. "Hiding was my survival strategy. It felt safe, but was really just stagnation. And now," Torres prompted. "Now I'm trying a different path," Nadia said. "Leading instead of hiding. Contributing instead of withdrawing. It is scary, and I am not sure where it leads, but at least I'm moving forward." "Forward is the only direction that matters," Torres agreed. They sat in companionable silence, drinking coffee and watching the night. Around them, the base settled into its nocturnal rhythm. Lights dimmed, voices quieted, but life continued with the steady persistence that defined military service. Inside the barracks, Nadia's bunk had been moved to the team leader position. Her wooden box of medals sat on the shelf, no longer hidden, but not prominently displayed either. Just present, acknowledged, part of her story, but not the whole of it. She had received 5 Purple Hearts for wounds sustained in combat. Each one represented pain, sacrifice, and survival against difficult odds. But tonight, she realized they represented something else too. Resilience. The ability to be wounded and yet continue serving. To carry scars and still move forward. To survive not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. The journey was far from over. Challenges remained. Old wounds would still ache. Memories would still surface in quiet moments. But she was no longer facing them alone, no longer hiding behind carefully constructed walls. She was Sergeant Nadia Volkov, leader, survivor, and soldier. All of those things at once, integrated and whole. 2 weeks after the rescue mission, Sergeant Nadia Volkov stood before her first class as an instructor. 20 soldiers filled the training room, all preparing for deployment to active theaters. They looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. She appeared young, and some clearly wondered what qualified her to teach them. She understood their doubt. She had been there herself once, questioning instructors who seemed too young or inexperienced. But she also understood that experience was not measured in years alone. "My name is Sergeant Volkov," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I am here to teach you tactical decision-making under pressure based on real-world experience from 4 combat deployments. Some of you are looking at me and wondering what I could possibly teach you. That is fair. So let me establish credibility up front." She walked to the board and wrote 5 numbers. "These represent the 5 times I was wounded in combat and received the Purple Heart. Each one taught me something different about survival, decision-making, and leadership. I am not here to glorify combat or make war sound heroic. I am here to give you the skills and knowledge that might keep you alive and bring you home." The room had gone completely silent, attention fully captured. "The first lesson," Nadia continued, "is that your assumptions will get you killed. When I first arrived at this company, everyone assumed I was inexperienced because I looked young and stayed quiet. Those assumptions were wrong and created problems. In combat, assumptions about enemy positions, civilian intentions, or terrain conditions can be fatal. Question everything. Verify constantly. Never assume." She spent the next 2 hours walking them through real scenarios, stripped of classified details, but rich with tactical lessons. She spoke about the importance of communication, the value of diverse perspectives, and the necessity of adapting when plans failed. The soldiers listened intently, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. When the class ended, several students approached her. One, a young private, spoke hesitantly. "Sergeant, can I ask you something personal?" "Depends on the question," Nadia replied. "How do you deal with it?" the private asked. "Coming back from deployment and trying to be normal again. My brother served, and he struggles. I'm trying to understand before I deploy." Nadia considered the question carefully. Honestly, she said, "You do not go back to normal because you're not the same person anymore. Combat changes you. The goal is not to return to who you were, but to integrate who you have become with who you want to be going forward. Some days that is easier than others. Some days it is nearly impossible. But you keep trying, and you find people who understand, and you give yourself permission to not have all the answers." The private nodded, clearly moved by the honesty. "Thank you, Sergeant. That helps." As Nadia walked back to her office, Lieutenant Colonel Morrison fell in a step beside her. "That was well done," he observed. "You connected with them in a way that is rare for instructors." "I just told them the truth," Nadia said. "Exactly," Morrison replied. "Truth is more valuable than polish. They will remember your lessons because they came from genuine experience, not textbook theory." That afternoon, Nadia led her team through training exercises. The dynamic had transformed completely from those early days. Brennan, Kessler, Torres, and Hayes worked together seamlessly, and they looked to her for guidance with genuine trust. During a tactical pause, Kessler approached. "Sergeant, I wanted to thank you for something." "For what?" Nadia asked. "For showing me that strength is not about being the loudest or most aggressive," Kessler said. "When you first arrived, I was threatened by you even though I did not understand why. Now I realize it was because you demonstrated a different kind of strength. Quiet competence. Genuine confidence without arrogance. That has changed how I approach my own development." "That means a lot," Nadia said sincerely. "You have grown significantly as a soldier. I see leadership potential in you." Kisla smiled. "I learned from watching you. How you lead by example rather than command. How you empower rather than control. That is the kind of leader I want to become." As evening approached, Captain Reeves called Nadia to his office. When she arrived, she found not just the captain, but Colonel Parrish as well. "Sergeant Volkov," Parrish began, "we have been discussing your future. Your performance as both team leader and instructor has exceeded expectations. We would like to recommend you for the Advanced Leadership Academy and eventual officer candidate school." Nadia felt her chest tighten. "Ma'am, that is a significant commitment. I'm not certain I am ready for that level of responsibility." "The question is not whether you are ready now," Parrish said. "The question is whether you are willing to continue growing. Leadership is not a destination, but a journey. You have demonstrated the qualities we need in our officer corps: vision, integrity, tactical excellence, and most importantly, the ability to develop others." She paused, her expression softening slightly. "I know you carry weight from your previous service. I know you came here hoping to disappear into anonymity. But soldiers with your capabilities have a responsibility to contribute at the highest level possible, not for glory or recognition, but because lives depend on the quality of our leadership." Nadia absorbed this, feeling the truth of the words even as she wrestled with her own doubts. "May I have time to consider, ma'am?" "Of course," Parrish replied, "but do not take too long. The next academy class starts in 3 months." That evening, the entire company gathered for a formal dinner celebrating recent accomplishments. Awards were presented, promotions announced, and achievements recognized. When Captain Reeves called Nadia forward for a special commendation for the rescue mission, the applause was thunderous. As she stood before the assembly, holding the commendation, she looked out at the faces of her fellow soldiers. These were people who had doubted her, mocked her, dismissed her. Now they looked at her with respect, trust, and genuine appreciation. The transformation was complete, both in how they saw her and how she saw herself. "Sergeant Volkov," Reeves said, "you came to this company as a mystery. You leave this moment as a leader, instructor, and valued member of our team. Your journey from silence to service has inspired many of us to examine our own assumptions and biases. Thank you for your patience with us as we learned to see you clearly." As the applause continued, Torres caught her eye and mouthed words she understood. "You did it." She nodded slightly, acknowledging not just the success, but the journey it required. Later, as the celebration wound down, Nadia found herself once again on the barrack steps, looking up at the stars. But this time, she was not alone. Her entire team joined her, sitting together in comfortable silence. If you enjoyed this story, please drop a comment and let us know your favorite part, character, or if you have had a similar situation happen to you before. Maybe you have witnessed someone being underestimated only to prove their true worth. Brennan broke the silence. You know, when you first arrived, I thought you were going to be our biggest problem. Turns out you were our biggest asset. Funny how wrong we can be. We all make mistakes in judgment, Nadia said. What matters is correction and growth. Speaking of growth, Torres added, I heard rumors about officer candidate school. Any truth to that? Nadia smiled slightly, still considering it. Part of me wants to keep things simple, but another part recognizes that sometimes the path we want is not the path we need. Whatever you decide, Kessler said, know that you have changed this team for the better. You have changed me for the better. That impact matters, regardless of rank or position. Hayes nodded agreement. You taught me more about leadership in a few weeks than I learned in months of officer training. I will carry those lessons throughout my career. They sat together as night deepened, a team forged not just through training, but through shared experience, mutual respect, and hard-earned trust. Above them, the stars shone with ancient light, witnessing this moment of connection and growth. Nadia thought about the wooden box in her footlocker, the 5 purple hearts that represented pain and sacrifice. She thought about the journey from hiding those medals in shame to accepting them as part of her story. She thought about the transformation from isolation to integration, from running to leading. The scars remained. The memories persisted. The weight was still real. But now she carried it differently, shared among teammates who understood and supported her. She was no longer defined solely by what she had survived, but by what she chose to do moving forward. Sergeant Nadia Volkov, decorated combat veteran, team leader, instructor, and survivor. She had been underestimated, dismissed, and doubted. But through quiet competence, genuine leadership, and courageous vulnerability, she had transformed not just how others saw her, but how she saw herself. The rookie they thought they knew had never really existed. In her place stood a warrior who had faced impossible odds and emerged stronger, wiser, and more human for the experience. Her 5 purple hearts had not just marked wounds on her body. They had marked stages in a journey from brokenness to wholeness, from hiding to healing, from survival to service. And as she sat with her team under the endless stars, she finally understood that her greatest strength had never been in remaining invisible. It had been in finding the courage to be seen.